Recent news is that the Democratic platform will support same-sex marriage. I am Matt Staver, founder and chairman of Liberty Counsel. Joining me is Matt Barber, vice president of Liberty Counsel Action. Matt, the word is that the Democratic platform that will be revealed later this year will actually support same-sex marriage. Now, the Democratic platform in 2008 supported the repeal of the Defense of Marriage Act, supported the repeal of the so-called Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which in fact is what the administration has actually done, is repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and are trying to undermine the Defense of Marriage Act. But now this particular platform, apparently following on the heels of the president's saying that he has evolved on the issue of same-sex marriage, will actually reflect that it supports same-sex marriage. It looks like a radical fringe of the Democratic Party has taken over the political machinery.
Yeah, the inmates are running the asylum over there, it sounds like, and it's really unfortunate because it just shows how out of touch this left-wing extremist faction within that is controlling certain elements of the Democratic Party, how far out of touch they are with the American people, even with their own constituents. When you consider, for instance, that a high number of African Americans vote Democrat, yet an extremely high number of African Americans understand the reality that there is no such thing as gay marriage or same-sex marriage, that it defies logic and reason, and that they're opposed to the radical redefinition of marriage. It just shows you here that these liberals are completely out of touch with their constituency.
It is. I mean, go back into the 2008 timeframe, and you look at the ballot initiative that was on the ballot there in California, where the people went to the polls to vote for marriage as a union of one man and one woman. And this was in November of 2008. The Supreme Court of California had, by a split decision, ultimately ruled that same-sex marriage would be permissible in that state. The people stopped that. They went to the polls. If you look at the African-American vote alone, just in that particular segment, they overwhelmingly voted for President Obama as the President of the United States. But they also overwhelmingly voted for the proposition that was put on the ballot to support and affirm marriage as a union of one man and one woman. That's right. So, I mean, it was just overwhelming, the numbers. So within the African-American community, which even though it votes largely Democratic, there is a strong pro-family contingency that believes in marriage as the union of one man and one woman. It seems as though that is going to alienate that community. You also have a lot of blue dog Democrats that are conservative in some of their views with regards to these issues and support marriage as the union of one man and one woman. What's it going to do to that segment of the Democratic Party? It just looks like there's been a radical fringe group that has taken over the platform of the Democratic Party, and now to affirm that the position will be same-sex marriage is absolutely startling.
Yeah, it is, but it's not surprising, unfortunately. President Obama kind of got the ball rolling by reversing course entirely, putting his finger to the wind and figuring out, I guess, that it would be politically expedient. I think it was a huge blunder on his part, saying that he has, in recent months has endorsed same-sex marriage. I guess that has emboldened the radicals within the Democratic Party to follow suit. It's unfortunate, but we've seen that they are turning up the heat. Anybody who supports natural marriage and does so vocally, the left is on a seek and destroy mission. We've seen it with Chick-fil-A. We've seen it with a baker, a family bakery in Lakewood, Colorado, who said that they would not do a homosexual wedding cake for a quote gay couple. They are in the crosshairs of radical leftists now as well, and it's surrounding this issue of radically redefining marriage, of pushing the oxymoronic notion of same-sex marriage.
It is. And, the thing with Chick-fil-A, I think, really illustrates what's coming if, in fact, same-sex marriage were to be legalized across the country as a policy matter. Several things would happen. And obviously what you see happening with Chick-fil-A is a prime example. You would be vilified like the mayor of D.C. calls the chicken hate chicken. Mayor Rahm Emanuel says that the values of Chick-fil-A are not consistent with the values of Chicago. The alderman in Chicago says you can't build here in the ward in his area that he has jurisdiction over. You also have Mayor Tom Menino of Boston saying that it is that Chick-fil-A is not welcome in their city. because of the position on same-sex marriage. The mayor of San Francisco says the same thing. The bakery person, the other individual down in New Mexico that refused to photograph a same-sex commitment ceremony, lost his appeal and now has to pay several $1,000s for refusing to photograph a same-sex commitment. Bed and breakfast up in Vermont that had been there for a long time ultimately says that they're having to push back. They're not going to have weddings in the facility anymore because he had a lesbian that wanted to have a same-sex ceremony there, and they said no. They were the brunt then of the human rights discrimination claim. And it goes on and on and on across the country where people are being vilified. We remember in California, people who supported the proposition to define marriage as one man and one woman, they were attacked. They were vilified.
They threatened to burn down churches.
They threw white powder on people back then. They did all kinds of things to intimidate them. Older ladies, remember that old lady that was pushed down?
And was carrying a cross, a styrofoam cross that in really kind of a metaphorical display, homosexualist activist jerked it out of her hand and stomped it to bits. I thought that was...
And this was an elderly lady. This was a grandmother like lady and was vilified, vicious, pushed down, assaulted because of her view on marriage. So this is what's coming. So to put this in perspective, when this platform says that it supports same-sex marriage, if that were to become the law of the land, anyone who believes in Judeo-Christian values and morality would become the target. They would be called haters. Their organizations would be called hate organizations, and they would be prohibited from actually doing business or forced to accept the homosexual lifestyle.
Well, you hear people say, well, how is gay marriage going to hurt your marriage? That's a red herring. We're not talking about it hurting my personal marriage. Radically redefining the institution of marriage hurts society. It hurts everyone. I recently wrote in an article talking about same-sex marriage. So-called same-sex marriage, it's a counterfeit. It's like taking a rotten apple, spray painting it orange, and then calling it orange. Gay marriage is no more real marriage than a rotten apple is an orange. I also said gay marriage is mock marriage. It's fantasy, a dead end. Even a child knows this intuitively, and in their heart of hearts, lefties and gay activists know it too. That's why they respond so violently when people snicker at it, or as in the case of Dan Cathy with Chick-fil-A, even respectfully acknowledge that it's not grounded in reality. They want to silence any even respectful acknowledgement that
they don't want to have a dialogue
fraud.
On this because they can't dialogue on it from a logical perspective, and so they want to shout you down and shut you up and then push you out of business so that you can't even practice your profession, pursue your calling, operate your business, do your daily life. That's what's coming. The other thing that actually same-sex marriage does is it sets a policy that says children don't need a mother and they don't need a father, that they're just as good raised without mom or dads, that mom and dads are just fungible items. They're unnecessary, and we know that that's simply not true.
Yeah. Well, in a recent study out of the University of Texas, which liberals have assailed because of its finding that children do, in fact, as we've always said, do better with a mother and a father, that it just shows you that even this researcher who did this unbiased study has been the left, even people within his own community are attacking him in a way. They seek to silence any opposition to the homosexual lifestyle, including same-sex marriage.
And, that's one of many research studies that actually find that. It's just common sense that, in fact, even President Obama, when he was running for president back in 2008, you remember he was talking about the fatherless syndrome and the implications of not having dad at home and the implications that has on young boys. It's common knowledge that in fact has a deleterious effect. Same-sex marriage essentially says, as a policy matter, that's okay. In fact, not only is it okay, we're going to prefer it and we're going to encourage people down this particular path. Well, I encourage you to not only get educated but motivated, because this is a shot over the bow. Chick-fil-A, now the Democratic platform being taken over by the radical left to support same-sex marriage. You can ask for my book, Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk. That's Same-Sex Marriage, Putting Every Household at Risk. You can get that at Liberty Counsel's website. Also, Rena Linda Voltson's book called Lisa Miller, The Lisa Miller Story, Only One Mommy. It's the story about Lisa Miller and her struggle for her life, her daughter, and her freedom. You can get both of those books by going to Liberty Counsel's website, lc.org. Also, go to the website and sign the Chick-fil-A petition right there at lc.org. That's lc.org. Sign the petition today.